The morning sun hid itself behind a thick shroud of clouds over Flagstaff, Arizona. This wasn't the kind of gentle, picturesque overcast you'd find on a postcard. No. And welcome back to Reality Recap. The sky felt heavy, as though the day itself sensed that something dark was about to break. The frigid air nipped into every inch of bare skin, forcing the crowd out of the courthouse to dig deeper into their jackets. Still, no one budged. Sister Wives fans, a devoted group of viewers of the Brown family soap opera, stood shoulder to shoulder with old-school reporters and curious townies. All the phones were held aloft, cameras pointed like predators poised to strike. It didn't matter if you were an adamant Kody Brown fan or one who'd vowed years prior that his demise was only a matter of time. Everybody was here for the same reason. This wasn't some other scripted TLC show. This wasn't TV edited. This was real, and it was raw. The courthouse's heavy glass doors reflected the throng outside, their flash camera bulbs flashing like lightning in an impending tempest. Whispers spread through the crowd. Some grumbled about the FBI. Others said Christine had come forward with something dynamite. Embezzlement, fraud, and betrayal were words that wafted in the air like smoke. Then, a black sport utility vehicle coasted up to the curb. Shiny, tinted so dark nobody could look in. The muttering grew louder, phones held higher, bodies stretched toward the barricades. The air was electric, taut. The back door creaked open slowly, nearly theatrically, and Kody Brown emerged. He didn't resemble the man viewers remembered from the early seasons, all smiles, charm, and surrounded by 4 wives and a film crew. Now his expression was carved from stone, mouth a hard line, eyes fixed straight ahead. The once famous mane of golden curls, his emblem of carefree charisma, was pulled back neatly, not a strand out of place. This was no reality TV, Dad. This was a man on trial. The crowd burst out in a chorus of yells. "Kody, is it so? Did you steal the money? Kody, over here!" But he didn't even look their way. From the rear of the SUV, Robyn walked out. Her head remained low, one hand holding onto Kody's arm. The moment the cameras picked up her face, she appeared to withdraw even deeper into her coat, hair cascading like a curtain to conceal behind. If Kody represented defiance, Robyn represented discomfort. Flanked by 2 men in black suits, their lawyers, they ascended the courthouse steps. The heavy doors swallowed them into a place where TV scripts had no currency. Inside, the air was cool. Marble floors clacked underfoot. The faint smell of old paper and polished wood lingered in the halls. Decades of trials, verdicts, and silent heartbreak. They hadn't reached the security checkpoint when the whispers started. The bailiff growled for order, but rumor traveled quicker than his voice. Embezzlement. More than $1 million. Christine's here. He's finished. Kody's jaw clenched, but his pace remained even. Robyn had her eyes fixed on the floor as if searching for cracks wide enough to slip into. Down the corridor, a local television news crew placed their tripod. The tall reporter in a red blazer practiced her lead. Today, one-time reality TV personality Kody Brown is charged with a crime that may alter the future of the one-time illustrious Brown family. The bailiff's voice boomed out. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patterson." The order echoed through the high-ceilinged space. Chairs scratched the floor like far-off thunder. Kody walked forward with his attorney, dozens of eyes following every step. This wasn't the place where Sister Wives was filmed. This wasn't his territory. For the first time in years, Kody wasn't the one controlling the story. In the front row, Christine sat still, hands crossed demurely in her lap. No wriggling, no looking around. Her eyes were fixed on Kody, not with wistfulness, but with chilling focus of one who had been marking off the hours until now. A couple seats over, Janelle huddled in with arms folded. Unreadable expression, but the faint, rhythmic tapping of her fingers against her arm gave away a seething anger. She'd not planned to be here, but when subpoenas issued, she knew she could no longer remain silent. The judge walked in, black robe swinging, and sat down. His gavel slapped the wooden block, a sound that made every thought in the room shatter. And in the ensuing silence, Kody Brown's carefully built world hung in the balance of being wrecked. The court clerk started reading the charges, every word falling with increasing weight. The state of Arizona versus Kody Brown. Charges: financial impropriety, misappropriation of public money, and fraud. From somewhere at the back, a sudden gasp shattered the air. Cameras clicked rapidly. Christine did not move. Outside these courtroom walls, hashtags were already burning up online. News notifications flashed across phones. TLC viewers were buzzing each other in shock. But in here, none of that was important. This wasn't about ratings anymore, Yang. This was about Kody Brown's future, and the fight had just started. The soft murmur of voices within died away into strained quiet. The atmosphere here wasn't merely still, it was heavy, like a room holding its breath. The massive wooden pews, sanded smooth over years of proceedings, creaked quietly as onlookers settled in for a glimpse of the man at the eye of the tempest today. Kody Brown sitting on the left side of the hall. Christine sat with her posture so precise it was nearly regal. Her back never made contact with the chair. Her chin only slightly lifted to indicate strength without arrogance. Her eyes, keen, unflinching, remained fastened on Kody like a hawk following quarry across a green meadow. She reminded herself she wasn't here for revenge. This was not about personal victory or watching him shatter. She was here for something greater, the truth. The reality concerning where all the money had ended up. The reality concerning the decisions that had brought them all to this place. And yet, under her composed exterior, there was a subcurrent that she couldn't deny. The pain of knowing that the man standing at trial was once the man she'd trusted with her life. A couple of rows down, arms crossed, lips pursed into a tense, unflinching line. Years she had been the peacemaker, the glue that held together a family that never seemed to agree on anything. But what she'd witnessed had cut through her allegiance like a knife. Her face showed nothing, but her hands told a different story. Light, rhythmic tapping against her sleeve, not annoyance, but calculation. She was counting every word, every step, every passing twitch on Kody's face. "All rise," the bailiff called out. Wooden benches squeaked across the floor in rolling thunder. The judge arrived, black robe billowing, face chiseled in stone, and settled into place behind the imposing bench. The American flag stood tall behind him. This court, the deep, steady, measured voice of the judge, will hear the case of the state of Arizona versus Kody Brown. The words hung in the air, unmarred until the soft click of a pen broke the stillness. Kody's lawyer stood, tall, in a sharply cut navy suit, the type of man who radiated confidence even when heading directly into losing battle. His hair slicked back, his voice smooth and rapid, as if velocity could overcome facts. "Your Honor," he began, "my client is not the man the media has painted him to be, but a husband, a father, and a businessman who has been unfairly targeted by individuals with personal grudges." His statements were sharp, practiced, polished, but something was clear. Each one hit an invisible wall, a barrier the prosecution had been building for weeks with stacks of evidence. Seated at the prosecution's table was a woman in a charcoal-colored suit with cold, steel-colored eyes. She sat immobile. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Fingers folded in her lap, expression unyielding, she was a presence that felt like a loaded gun cocked and ready to be fired, waiting for the precise moment to do so. Christine didn't budge, simply allowed her eyes to jump once towards her own attorney. He leaned forward, muttered something in a voice for her ears only. She nodded once, her lips compressing just that little bit more, the slightest indication that what he'd said had reassured her of something she was waiting to hear. Kody maintained his focus generally forward, scribbling occasionally on a yellow legal pad, but his eyes strayed to Christine, to Janelle, to the mountain of files gathering on the prosecution table. Each look was a little heavier than the wand. That desk was a wall of evidence. Bank records, wire transfers, records of transactions. Each folder neatly clipped, tabbed, color-coded. Each a chapter in a book Kody hoped would never be read. From where you stood in the gallery, you could feel the unspoken line cutting the room in half. Half still true to Kody, the other half waiting to watch him topple. Between them sat the press, furiously writing, their eyes flicking between the two sides of this drama unfolding. The voice of the defense attorney rose with every argument. "The alleged evidence that has been put forth in the media," he stated, "is circumstantial at best. My client, the defense attorney went on, managed difficult finances for a large family living under intense public scrutiny for years. Errors, maybe, but criminal intent? Not at all. Christine's attorney didn't even look up from his notes. He just turned a page with quiet deliberation, as if the defense's opening statement was mere background noise before the actual trial started. From where she sat, Janelle narrowed her eyes. She'd known Kody spin convincing tales before, spinning words like yarn, drawing people into his world. But today, everything was different. There were too many obvious cracks, too many loose ends that couldn't be swept under the rug. The judge sat silently, occasionally scribbling in the thick, leather-bound volume in front of him. Renowned for his patience, but just as much for his disdain for theatrics, this was a man who cared little for show but much for truth, and it hung over Kody like a specter. When the defense finally sat, the prosecutor stood up slowly. She didn't start right away. Rather, she allowed her eyes to scan the room, lingering on Christine, then Janelle, and coming to rest on Kody. Then, with her voice steady but cutting, she addressed them. The state will demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that Kody Brown knowingly diverted funds for his own personal benefit. We will provide the paper trail, we will provide the witnesses, and when this trial is over, the truth will be irrefutable. The silence that came after was heavy, not hollow. It was felt by everyone in the room. Christine's lips creased into a barely perceptible smile. Not victory, but subtle confirmation. Then, the shift, the moment no one knew they were waiting for. The prosecutor extended their arm beneath the table and retrieved a fat, bulging folder, its black binder clips groaning against the sheer weight of paper within. No hurry, no theatrics required. The methodical speed was its own kind of intimidation. With a smooth, firm gesture, the prosecutor pushed the folder along the slick surface of the table toward the defense. Our verified financial records, she spoke with ease, voice carrying across the silence, representing more than $1 million in missing money linked directly to accounts held by Mr. Brown. The words snapped out across the room like thunder. For an instant, there was silence. No cough, no shuffle, not even the hum of the lights. Then the muttering started to swell like a tide. $1 million? That can't be right. No, it's right. Even Kody, the expert at keeping his expression in check, blinked once and then forced his face back into its stiff mask. He tightened his tie as if that movement could hold him fast. Robyn beside him had paled to almost white, her lips sealed so tightly together they seemed to vanish. She stared at the table, refusing to look at him as if looking might validate her worst nightmare. Kody's lawyer snapped open the folder with a dramatic flick. Pages spilled across the table like a broken dam. Bank statements stamped with official seals, wire transfer slips, emails, signed authorizations. He scanned them at pace, but his movement betrayed panic. "This is ridiculous," he at last said, standing up. "These are private family money, not government funds. My client has committed no crime. This is sheer witch hunt masquerading as financial impropriety." The prosecutor did not bat an eyelid. "These are not family expenditures, Mr. Collins. We will demonstrate to the court precisely where the funds were spent, and, more significantly, who transferred it." Without hesitation, she turned to the bailiff. "Call the state's first witness." The twin double doors swung open, and a late 40-ish man walked in. Crisp gray suit, glasses reflecting overhead light, neatly combed hair, but a nervousness in his eyes that betrayed he hadn't wanted to be here, though he'd had no choice. Following his sworn oath, his voice was low but firm. "Please say your name and your profession for the record," instructed the prosecutor. "David Whitaker, registered financial advisor. I advised the Brown family between 2013 and 2019. And throughout that period," she went on, "were you in charge of managing the family's financial accounts?" "Yes," said Whitaker. "I handled several accounts related to earnings from the Sister Wives TV show, along with business and personal investments." Christine edged a little to one side. She recognized this man. They'd talked years earlier, briefly, when she'd inquired about the family budget and had been dismissed with vague promises. "Kody takes care of it." "Mr. Whitaker," The prosecutor moved in a step closer. Did you ever find discrepancies in these accounts? He pushed his glasses up his nose. Yes, on a number of occasions, I saw big withdrawals and transfers to accounts which were not within the official family portfolio. And whose accounts were these? They were in Mr. Brown's name alone. And were these transactions sanctioned? Yes, by Mr. Brown himself, typically over direct late-night telephone calls. The prosecutor waited for emphasis, allowing her eyes to scan the jury, then the courtroom. And what did Mr. Brown indicate in these calls? She asked. Whitaker let out a slow breath. He instructed me to transfer the money before anyone caught on. He never said who anyone was, but his voice was urgent. I was not to tell the other members of the family. A wave of gasps swept the courtroom. Christine's eyes remained locked on Kody, looking for any glimmer of weakness. A twitch, a wince, the faintest hint of guilt. But Kody's face was as unmoving as a rock, though the faint creaking of his jaw muscle every few seconds betrayed tension. Janelle, however, closed her eyes for a brief moment. She had suspected secrecy for years, but hearing it laid bare in front of strangers, and in front of Christine, made it real in a way she hadn't been ready for. The defense attorney rose, pacing slowly before beginning his cross-examination. Mr. Whitaker, you've worked with high-profile clients before, haven't you? Yes. And large last-minute transfers aren't unusual in business management? Sometimes, Whitaker conceded, but not to personal expenses that cut across the family budget, and certainly not without notice to persons of interest. The lawyer's smile was weak. Stakeholders? You mean wives? Whitaker nodded once. The defense pushed harder. And could it be that Mr. Brown's behavior was merely to safeguard his possessions in the midst of marital or familial disagreements, which, I might add, is legal? Whitaker paused. I do not know what his motives were, I can only recite the facts, and the facts are that more than $1 million flowed out of joint family accounts and was transferred to individual accounts available to Mr. Brown only. Christine's attorney sat forward, pen in hand, waiting for the right moment to strike. The judge interrupted. The court will address motive at the proper time. Proceed. The defense changed tack, riffling through the binder of documents the prosecution had turned over. Mr. Whitaker, throughout all your years administering the Brown accounts, ever observed my client spending money unlawfully? No, Whitaker replied matter-of-factly. But monitoring how the money was spent wasn't my job. I simply carried out transfers as directed. Where it went from there, I can't comment on that. The defense attorney smirked as if he'd won the point, but the prosecution barely blinked. Moving in, her voice was firm, but bore authority. Mr. Whitaker, are the documents in this folder complete and accurate? Yes, ma'am. And do they represent precisely what you observed under Mr. Brown's supervision? They do. Facing the judge, she continued. The state moves to have these documents admitted into evidence. The judge nodded. So ordered. The folder was set down on the desk of the court clerk, now officially on the record. It lay there like a loaded gun, irrefutable and waiting to be fired. From where they were in the gallery, it seemed the air had grown heavy. The crowd leaned forward, drawn in by the weight of the moment. Even the reporters had stopped their hectic writing, gazes fixed on the massive pile of paper that could determine the destiny of Kody Brown. Christine permitted herself the slightest exhale, her eyes still fixed on Kody. If he sensed the growing pressure, he didn't betray it. But to her, the brief clench of his jaw was all the proof she needed. It was a sign, small but certain, that the fortress he'd constructed about himself at last might be starting to crack. The brief recess had done nothing to dissipate tension. If anything, the interruption had focused it, like steam building inside a shut kettle. In the gallery, mutters boiled, speculation passed around, side remarks made. The bailiff yelled for quiet, his voice sounding off the wood-paneled walls, but the tide of expectation refused to subside. All of them sensed it. The next witness was going to count. When the prosecution announced the name, The room made an audible stir. Christine Brown. Christine stood up from her chair, smoothing the front of her jacket. Her movements towards the witness stand were measured and calculated. Not rushed, not hesitant. The stride of a person who knew how much was at stake in this moment. At the stand, the clerk offered a small Bible. Christine put her left hand on it, raised her right. "Do you promise to tell the truth, the entire truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do," she answered. Her voice was calm, not a whisper, not a bellow. The prosecutor nodded slightly, stepping back to give her room. Christine didn't appear to need a moment to collect herself. "I want to start by saying," she began, her eyes sweeping briefly toward the jury, "I'm not here to destroy Kody. This isn't about revenge or bitterness. I'm here because my children, our children, deserve to know the truth about what happened to the money that should have been for their future." Her words weren't loud, but they carried weight, and not a trace of tremor. Kody's attorney sprang to his feet in a flash. "Objection, Your Honor. This is charged testimony and irrelevant to the financial allegations being discussed." The judge leaned back a bit, weighing the issue, then said, "Overruled. The witness may proceed. This court will hear her view as it relates to the family finances." Christine nodded at the judge, then swung around to face the prosecutor again. "Mrs. Brown," the prosecutor started, "can you characterize the family's financial situation in the years preceding these allegations?" Christine clenched her jaw for an instant before answering. "I was told not to worry about the money for years," she said. "Kody assured me he had everything taken care of. I believed him. I didn't inquire. But sooner or later I began noticing things. Bills not getting paid, savings accounts being depleted, college money vanishing." "Did you confront Mr. Brown with this?" "Yes," she said matter-of-factly. "Many times. And each time he said it was temporary, that the money was involved in some business venture or piece of property. But whenever I pressed for specifics, I'd get evasive responses or he'd shift the subject." Christine looked over at Kody. For the first time that day, he had looked at her. His eyes were tight, but his lips remained motionless. "What was the mood like in the house during this time?" the prosecutor asked. "Tense," Christine confessed. "We fought not only about money, but trust. I felt I was rooming with a stranger, and when I pressed too hard for information, he'd close up completely." The prosecutor grabbed a piece of paper from the table. "Mrs. Brown, I'm exhibiting to you Exhibit 14, records of a $75,000 withdrawal on a joint account you and Mr. Brown had. Did you know about this transaction?" Christine slouched forward to look at the paper. "No, I didn't learn about it until months later, when I attempted to use that account to pay for my daughter's tuition. I confronted Kody about it, and he claimed it was for land purchasing. But there was no land purchase. Later on, I discovered the money had been transferred into one of his personal accounts." A ripple of murmurs moved through the gallery, quickly silenced by the bailiff's stern warning. Kody's lawyer rose again, slower this time, his tone laced with condescension. "Mrs. Brown, you've been publicly critical of my client since your separation, haven't you?" Christine's gaze didn't waver. "I've been honest. There's a difference." The lawyer's smile was slight. "And isn't it possible that your testimony today is motivated by personal grievance and not financial reality?" Christine's eyes drew slightly narrower. "The facts are the facts. I didn't fabricate those bank statements or falsify those transfers. I can only recount how the missing money affected our family." The defense lawyer shrugged dismissively. "No further questions?" The judge looked to the prosecutor. "Redirect?" "Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Brown, did you have any control over these accounts?" "No," she said. "Kody had access alone." "Thank you. No more questions." Christine moved uncomfortably in her seat, preparing to leave. But before she did, Kody finally spoke. His tone was biting, cutting through the room. "Christine, here, you're distorting this. You've been against me since the day you walked out." It was not a scream, but it hit like one. The room responded at once. Murmurs, gasps, the rapid scratching of pens. The gavel of the judge crashed down like a clap of thunder. "Mr. Brown, you will speak only when spoken to." Kody shifted back, jaw clenched. His lawyer rested a calming hand on his arm, but he didn't notice. He continued to gaze out in front, face set, although for a brief instant his eyes revealed something else. A tiny crack in the smooth veneer of the self-assured reality TV dad. Not quite enough for cameras to see, but enough for people who knew him, Christine, Janelle, even Robyn, to spot. Christine slid out of her seat without a word, past Kody with her gaze averted, and returned to her seat. Her heels made a sharp clicking on the tile, a sound that went on ringing long after she sat down. The prosecutor called the next witness, yet the atmosphere in the room didn't change right away. Everyone was still reliving what had happened. The quiet, measured testimony, Kody's unexpected burst of anger, the judge's firm gavel. Christine exhaled slowly. She wasn't smiling, and she wasn't celebrating. She was simply studying. The kind of study that comes from knowing you've spoken your truth, whether or not the other person wanted to hear it. And from the look on Kody's face, he'd heard it loud and clear. The last hour of the day's business had an odd heaviness to it, as if the storm that had rolled in and yet wouldn't break weighed down on them all. Papers rustled. The judge scanned his notes, and the gallery held its breaths, waiting for whatever turn was yet to come. Kody's eyes never looked up from the board in front of him. Robyn leaned forward, whispering something that caused him to nod once, his face not giving anything away. At the other end of the aisle, Christine sat up straight, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the bench. Janelle hadn't moved much over the last hour, her immobility bordering on creepy. Finally, the judge cleared his throat. Before we take a break for today, there is one more thing to take care of. Each head in the courtroom rose. The air was thick. In consideration of the evidence before it and to avoid any potential dissipation of assets, this court orders all of Mr. Kody Brown's known assets to be temporarily frozen pending further review. The words hung there for a heartbeat, then exploded. Murmurs broke out in the gallery, building into a low rumble. Calls for order by the bailiff were almost drowned out. Kody's attorney jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is a draconian measure." The judge raised a hand. "Counselor, my ruling is final. The freeze remains in effect until the court can review the financial records more fully." Robyn's face was pale. She glanced toward Kody, wide eyes, moving lips. Whether it was a question or a plea, no one could tell. Kody's jaw clenched, but not a word escaped his lips, fists flexed on the tabletop. The judge's gavel came down with a sharp crack. Court is adjourned until 9 a.m. tomorrow. The spell was shattered at once. Pandemonium flowed through the courtroom. Reporters sprang up, phones aloft, hoping to catch every scowl. Shutters clicked incessantly. Kody and Robyn quickly stood, striding toward the nearest door. The bailiff stepped forward to make a path, but photographers in the hall were relentless. The instant Kody entered the hallway, the horde converged. A wall of bright lights and bellowed questions. "Kody, do you have something to say about the asset freeze? Robyn, are you concerned your house might be taken? Do you deny the allegations of embezzlement?" Neither replied. Kody clutched Robyn's arm, head down, as they made their way through the scrum. The couple were swallowed up in a waiting black SUV, doors closing before it roared away. Christine took the other exit, quieter, less reporters. She walked steadily, posture erect. If she noticed the murmurs behind her, she gave no indication. Her face evidenced neither smugness nor defeat, merely quiet determination. Several minutes later, Janelle exited a side door alone, receiving little notice. Outside, the courthouse steps hummed like a beehive. Some of the fans live-streamed excited play-by-plays. One woman waved a sign, "Justice for the Browns." Another one nearby held, "Kody is innocent." One man in a TLC hoodie informed anyone who would listen, "This is a witch hunt. Christine's behind all of it." A voice interrupted from a few feet away. "No way." This is what happens when the truth finally comes out. Arguments flared in all directions. The courthouse lawn had become a live talk show. In minutes, hashtags started trending. Hashtag Kody on trial. Hashtag sister-wife scandal. Brown family truth. Pieces from the courtroom went viral. Christine on the stand, the judge's announcement, Kody's stone-faced expression. TikTokers picked apart every look. One tweet zoomed to the front. Kody's face when the judge froze his assets. That's a man who didn't see it coming. Sister-wife scandal. Speculation ran rampant. Would Kody lose real estate? Would Robyn's jewelry be considered assets? Would TLC pick up the tab? Theories grew by the minute. Reaction streams flared on YouTube, hosts arguing whether it was a debacle or a mere setback. Cable news covered it wall-to-wall that night. 3 networks had split-screen analyses. On one, a retired prosecutor stated, "Freezes aren't standard practice here. The judge obviously believes the evidence merits it." On another, a Hollywood attorney responded, "It's a precaution, not evidence of guilt. But in public, it's disastrous. Even the late-night shows couldn't stay away." One joked, "Kody Brown's assets are frozen. Guess the sister wives will have to get back to sister-thawing." The crowd erupted. In the tinted SUV windows behind them, Kody and Robyn sat silently tense. Robyn sat forward, hands folded. At last, she spoke. "They're going to dig through everything, Kody. Our home, the accounts." She didn't finish. "I know," Kody interrupted harshly. He didn't explain. He didn't have to. The freeze was a no-go on transactions, on sales, on quiet transfers. Everything was frozen until the court decided otherwise. Across town, Christine sat at her kitchen table with tea in front of her, ignoring the cacophony of calls on her phone. Friends awaited her response, reporters her quotes, family her news. She stared out into the Arizona evening. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As darkness fell, rumors were at their highest. Some believed Kody's camp would retaliate in the morning. Others assumed that it was the start of the end, that he'd negotiated to keep from having a lengthy trial. On Reddit, one of the most popular comments was, "Tomorrow's the day. If Christine has more evidence, Kody's done." Inside the courthouse, a single security light fell across the vacant steps, where hours before cameras had clicked and voices had cried out. Now there was only echo. One thing was certain. When those doors opened tomorrow, the storm would rage back stronger than ever. And whether Kody Brown emerged free or in greater difficulty, the world would be watching.